My name is Dr. Katharine Wilkinson, and this question about what my climate thing is actually really made me laugh because my partner gives me a hard time every time we, meet someone new and they're like, "So what do you do?" I'm like, well, I work on climate change, and then it gets very awkward. In a lot of ways, I wear a lot of hats. I'm sort of a hopeless interdisciplinarian, and that has continued to sort of show up in my professional life. So I'm an author, editor, podcast host, speaker, teacher, strategist, and I am the executive director of the All We Can Save project, which is a new emergent nonprofit. But maybe kind of what's helpful is like beneath those hats, right? Because we have a tendency to sort of see how people show up in the world, but not necessarily what they care about or committed to, or kind of the tools they are intentionally using within their climate thing. I guess the thing that I really care about and feel committed to is growing deep and sustained and courageous participation in the work to grow a just and life-giving future. There are heaps of ways to do that, but the tools that I use primarily are narrative change work, books, podcasts, community building, things like All We Can Save circles, which we might talk more about, and then also deep learning, seminar courses and that sort of thing. And through everything that I do within my climate thing, I really try to think about tending the emotional, spiritual root from which climate leadership grows, both for myself, but also for this growing ecosystem of transformation. It has been a winding path, I will say that much. I kind of got activated around climate change when I was in high school. So I've been doing this work now for well over 2 decades. And I think the truth is that I've had a lot of false starts and zigzags, and kind of over that time trying to get sort of truer and truer to what I think my best contribution is. So like a lot of young people, I mostly wore activist hats kind of at the beginning of my climate journey. I went down the path of getting a PhD and seeing if academic research and being a professor might be my jam. Turned out it was not. I went down a path of seeing if business might be an interesting way to be kind of closer to the site of impact when politics can feel hard to move. That wasn't the right fit for me. So there has been this kind of ongoing, Rilke's advice, right? To sort of live the questions themselves of what can I do? What can we do? Which I think is really a central question of our lives and this era of human existence. And what I've found, I guess, over the years is that there's just not a simple formula, but for me, there's been a series of reflections that's been really helpful to kind of getting to better and better answers to that question of what can I do? And the first one is one we don't talk about all that much in climate, but I think it's really critical grounding, which is to feel your feelings. I think there's powerful information in our feelings. There's potentially powerful fuel in our feelings. And when we don't attend to them, I think they can become a source of malaise or paralysis. So starting there and returning to that piece of anchoring in my feelings has been critical. The second one is scouting your superpowers. There is so many ways to do climate work. Lots of folks will, I think sort of chase after roles that seem really effective or seem to be working for someone else. And I really believe that we need to be bringing kind of the best of our skills and our talents into this work. So really coming back to what you are uniquely good at and passionate about and sort of fired up by doing. And then, of course, there's if those two pieces are more introspective, there's also the looking outward piece, which is surveying the landscape of climate solutions and the different accelerators or kind of leverage points we have for making change. And again, there's so much there. We have so many tools in the toolbox. You couldn't possibly apply all of them. So kind of seeing like, where do you feel energy in that landscape of things? The Drawdown Review is a free resource that can be a great way to just get an overview. I often find myself going back to Donella Meadows' really seminal writing about leverage points to intervene in a complex system and kind of which of those leverage points feels like a fit for me. And then again, on the kind of looking outward step, considering your context and your community, right? We're not operating in silos. We're operating in geographies, in professional sectors, in our local communities, et cetera, et cetera. The groups we're a part of, the things that we belong to, those are often, I think, really helpful to think about, how might climate action play out within these contexts or a critical community that I'm a part of. And then the last one is to cultivate a climate squad. We don't get very far doing this work alone. The we, I think, is the really incredible and powerful piece of this puzzle. And so who do you want to be linking arms with? I think so often the best ideas get born out of collaborative imaginings and not something we come up with on our own. So that's my approach. Feel your feelings, scout your superpowers, survey solutions, consider your context, and cultivate a climate squad, and then rinse and repeat. Because if there's one thing I wish I could go back and tell my 16-year-old self, who is frantically journaling about wanting to help the world and be connected to the earth, is that there's not a simple answer. And it's going to be more tangle of rhododendron than straight shot white pine. And to get comfortable with that and to lean into those questions and let them lead you. I think the challenge is that the problem feels so big, right? And we can feel so small. And the sheer number of possible things we could do can be overwhelming. Sometimes I think it's really helpful to think about kind of 3 spheres of my life where I'm able to take action. And the first is the personal, right? Kind of what can be done within your close-in life, right? At home, in your neighborhood, with the people you love. What can you do professionally, right? I think this is a piece that we have often overlooked. My friend Jamie Alexander says every job is a climate job, right? Figuring out those points of connection between your professional skills, talents, knowledge, and where that can connect with climate action. And then the political, whether that is engaging in electoral politics, in policy advocacy, in protest, right? Participating in democracy is a really critical piece too. And I kind of feel like if I've got something going in each of those areas, not everything in the personal, everything in the professional, and everything in the political all at once, but kind of an area or two of focus in each of those, then that starts to make it, I think, feel pretty comprehensive, but also pretty doable. I don't know that it's entirely possible to absolutely avoid it. But I think that there are things we can do, practices that we can integrate that can be really helpful. And I think one of them we've kind of already touched on, which is not going it alone. For me, finding ways to be and to feel connected to earth and to kindred community is really powerful. And this is one of the things that we've seen with All We Can Save circles, which are a great resource for doing some community building and really tending to that kind of relational strength within our climate work. I think seeking out emotional support is another one, right? Just going back to that piece of feeling our feelings, we get really clear really quickly that this is emotionally challenging territory to be in. And so a therapist or a counselor who is climate aware can be a great resource. I think mindfulness practices can be really helpful. We actually, the All We Can Save project teamed up with Britt Ray and Generation Dread to curate a whole set of resources for working with climate emotions. And a lot of those are accessible and free. So check out our website if you're looking for some more sources of emotional support, allwecansave.earth. And then I think, one of the things that I find is that, right, the climate crisis is just barreling forward. And I think that can, for me, sometimes feel like I have to be continually barreling forward in this work. When I do that, that is like absolutely a recipe for burnout. So allowing for some ebb and flow kind of in our own engagement, right? Nature does this really well. There are seasons. There are times to hibernate and times to grow and to give. That kind of in some ways circles back to me to the piece about not going it alone and having a climate squad, because there can be this like beautiful exchange, right? Where there are moments when parts of the collective are really leaning in and other parts of the collective need to rest and renew. And yet it can still feel like together we are moving forward. And then I really think about following the things, whether it's in climate work or outside of it, that grow a sense of authentic power and joy. This work takes a lot of courage to just keep staying in it, regardless of, knowing the outcome, and also to really soak in joy when it arises. And to me, that's like, it's part of being in tune with and aligned with life force, which I think is kind of the ultimate goal of all of this, right? That we are participating in this incredible dynamic on our planet that has been moving forward more life to more life for 3.8 billion years. And that's kind of what I try to come back to and anchor in as this like bigger, deeper, truer truth that we are life force. We are part of Gaia, and to take some courage from that and to take some solace from that too. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is I really get it. The nature of working on such a big global systemic challenge is that we just do feel small. We are not small alone. We are small in our kind of own little nodes within this ecosystem of transformation that just keeps growing. More and more people are stepping off the sidelines and into this work in some way. Like there's, for me, almost a wisdom in the smallness that reminds us to tend to those connections, because that is where we get a sense of our strength. And I think we just don't always know the ways that our work is going to kind of ripple and magnify in the world. And something that can start out as seemingly very small can sort of grow and multiply in, kind of with the logic of fractals. Adrienne Maree Brown talks about being a cell within the human organism, and kind of striving for the very best cellular life we can manage. I think there's this inexorable like musculature to life on this planet. And we are made of that same stuff, right? The same quiet determination, this upwelling, this very gossamer, but tenacious latticing between us. And I think we have to keep trying to sort of taste the thing that is already true, that we are part of Earth's healing and we are here to make whole, each in our own best ways possible. I think in a lot of ways that this work is really about becoming the truest versions of ourselves. When I think about moments or kind of seasons when I've been really deeply flourishing, it's because I'm really, really connected to the thing that I'm longing for. I feel myself as a commitment to a more just and livable future. We know this, right, in the literature around human well-being and positive psychology, that purpose is so powerful. And also that being connected to community is so powerful. And I think those are two things that you can't really do this work without them. And so it means that they get kind of structured into the core of your days and your being ultimately. There have been moments where I've kind of stepped out of climate work for a mix of not knowing where I fit, or just feeling so depressed about where things were. And what I have found on those couple of occasions is that the only thing that's harder than doing this work is not doing this work. When you give yourself to it, it does become this source of, I think, of light in your life. That's such an incredible gift, right? It's such an incredible thing to be alive on the planet in a moment that matters as much as this one does. And if that is not flourishing, I don't know what is. Move your money out of dirty financial institutions and into climate solutions. Get gas out of your home. Celebrate the induction cook stove. Opt for bikes, public transit, less or no flying. Volunteer for political campaigns. Donate to campaigns. Run for office. Volunteer with the Environmental Voter Project and call up environmental voters, get them out to the polls. Find ways to move climate solutions forward at work. Use the Climate Solutions at Work resource from Project Drawdown. Opt for more plant-based foods. Compost. Get your hands in the soil. Protect forests that are already alive and intact.